Hello everyone, this is Teacher Wayne and I'm continuing my Unity 2018 series on my zombie survival game. In this video I'm going to start the weapon system, so it's the first part of those videos, but I also want to do a little bit of a recap of where we are and also just sort of make it clear what code I've got at this stage, because just make sure that you understand all the code. So I'm going to do a short little walkthrough and show me all your code. I also am going to create a link to all my code assets as well, so you can download them and look at them at this stage in the game. Okay, so quick recap. So we've got our game working. It's actually in basic sense a zombie survival game. I've got 3 zombies walking towards me. They'll attack me all individually, and if I take too much damage I die. I think that's where I left it in the last video. So now let's just have a look at the code I have at this moment in time then. So the code that I have, minimize, and let's go clear that with the project. I have 4 bits of code at this stage. I have a HUD manager code, a look Y code, which is really simple, a player code and a zombie code. The 2 main bits of code are the zombie code and the player code. Those are the main 2 ones. The HUD manager is a secondary bit of code that provides functions for these 2, and look-wise a tiny bit of code that just allows us to look up and down. So let's just go through these code elements, and we'll start with player, this one here. So this is my player code, so let's go right to the top. I'll just scroll it up here. So just to go through it here, I've defined everything I've defined here is apart from this public float. Now I can change that to a private anytime I want. This is the speed at which the character moves backwards and forwards. I'm still fiddling with that. I'll leave that as a public at the moment, but for when you're actually getting further in, you start with public variables but you end up with private. Public is great to begin with while you're playing about with, but when you're trying to prototype it more, you need to move from public to private as quickly as possible. So I've got a private HUD manager. Now I could potentially do a public HUD manager and just drag and drop and do it that way. However, as I said, you do get problems using public variables. So I've done it as a private, and here you can see that's how I function, get a link between the HUD variable and the HUD manager, and it gets hold of the actual HUD manager script. So this gives us a link to the script. I've got an update function which just calls 3 functions: keyboard movement, move left and right, and check to see if we're dead. So there's our keyboard movement here. Allows us to move around using the WASD keys. That's mouth left and right. As I said, we've got a look Y that does the up and down. So this one, it goes left and right, and this here just simply checks the health. It goes, that's the HUD function, that's why we have a link to the HUD. And then this is the function that, because we're in the editor at the moment, it just stops us playing in the editor. When we move further into the game, we're going to change that to the other one, which is the application one. So that is the player script there. I'll start from the top and slowly scroll down so you guys can have a look. Right, that's the player. Let's go to the zombie script now. Let's start at the top. So we've got a set of private variables. Now the zombie, it really needs, everything needs to be private up here, because this zombie is a prefab and we're going to be spawning it again and again and again. Any public variables in here, they're going to be different for each zombie, so you have to keep them private so that they're all the same, as in each entity, each private instant of this zombie through the prefab will operate correctly. Best way to describe it. So don't put publics up here when you're creating prefabs. It'll cause all sorts of problems. So I've got a link to the HUD manager, and there's the HUD manager. I've got a link to the player. Where's the player? There's the player. I've actually done it as 2 variables. I could do it as 1 variable like this, but I've not, because I've split it into 2. I'm not saying that this is any better or worse than doing it this way, but I'm just saying it's a different way of doing it. There's more than one way to cook an omelette, my mum would say. Right, And we've also got a link to the anim. Now there seems a lot less fuss with the anim because the animator is part of the zombie. Or actually, because it's part of the own, it's attached to the zombie, the animator. We don't need to faff about as much. So we're connecting to the animator, we're having a look where the player is, and we're using the HUD so that we can edit the health. And also we've got some of the things. The zombie got its own health, which is where we're going to come at shortly. It's got a distance and an angle to the player. So that's the start element. We've got an update here. So this here looks at the distance to the player and the angle to the player. And then basically we're saying here we've got the different states. We've got the walk state, the attack state, and the dead state. Now this dead state's not been activated, but we've got that sort of to make it future proof because we're going to be using that shortly. If the distance is greater than 2, but the distance is less than 50, then we walk in, and the angle is 45. In other words, I can say it. We walk, so that walk state, that just triggers the animation. Then that just makes sure that the zombie stays on the ground, which is quite handy. This does a slurp. It's a slow rotation towards the player, and then I just put a little comment up about its walking. I can comment that out now because we don't need it. So if the distance is less than or equal to 2 and the angle is less than 45, then we're attacking. Once again, keep the zombie on the ground. That's the animation. And here, HUD, it gives the player 1 point of damage. We can edit that 1. We can create a variable that points to 1 whenever we want. I'm going to comment out is attacking because this works now. If it's dead, if the zombie dies, it's just a dead state, and that's the dead animation. And we've got a little log. At the moment, we're going to eventually add a function here, and we're actually going to deal with how to remove this prefab from the scene, but that's for a later stage. And then idle stage, basically if none of those are true, it's going to be idle, and it's going to be doing nothing, just stood around looking. So I'll comment out that one. I'm going to leave that as it is for now because it doesn't get cold at the moment because we can't kill the zombie. And these are all the different animation states. So let me just do a slow scroll so that you can see what I've got, because this code all works. All I've done is just comment out some debugs. Right, okay. Now the HUD manager is the next major bit of code. HUD manager, the responsibility of the HUD manager is just simply inputs, gets information, if you look here, about where these various elements of the HUD are and how we can change them. So for example, at the moment it's about managing the health, but later we're going to be looking at score, clips, ammo, that sort of stuff. So here we are. This here is a way of linking externally the image. This is, we could have made this public and drag and dropped it. This is allows us almost to do this, but keeps it private. It's a quite clever way of doing it, serialized here. I'm going to create a separate little video on about the difference between these public and the other way of doing it. So we at the start, we set the health to max, which is 100. We show the health on the HUD, so in other words it displays it correctly. And then we've got all these public functions, because these functions are used externally by the player script and the zombie script. That's why we make them public. The HUD manager doesn't change them. It provides functions for these two. We're going to be creating these C# scripts that are just basically all they do is like provide services for other scripts. So we've got show health, which shows the health. Intake damage, this is what the zombie calls. It calls that and reduces damage. Can you see I set it as a variable? So I put 1 in, but we could easily increase it, so because we want other monsters further in the game that will do more damage, which we'll come to later in the game development. Get health, and that just simply shows the health, and this is the function that a player calls. And then I've got one more script that's not on this list called show look wine. I'm just going to show that just for completeness. This here is just has one function called up down, and it does basically allows us to move our mouse up and down. Simple as that. I don't need to do much with that, but I'll show you where it links. Player is where the player script is attached. Pivot point is where the look Y script is attached, just to make sure that you're clear about that. Zombies I've got one main one, and these other two are prefabs. The zombie has the zombie script, and the HUD has the HUD manager. Notice here we've got a raycaster script. That is a built-in function, and we're going to be using that very shortly. Right, so that's the first part of this exercise done. Let's move to the second part. We want to shoot things. So player, what we need to do is we need a function called shoot. Now how do we shoot? We shoot when we press in a keyboard. So what we want to do is we want to check that we're clicking the mouse button. So say if we click the mouse button, then we're going to do a shoot action. So what we do is we go if input, once again, dot, and this time it's get mouse, and as I tap, there it is, mouse button, and this time it's in 0. In other words, that's the left hand mouse button. So we click the mouse button, then we want to shoot. So we're going to create a function called shoot, to shoot. It's going to be a function. Now this function has not yet been defined, so we get this funny little error message. Don't worry about it. We're about to resolve that. So if that happens, we're going to do a shoot. Obviously we might want to check ammo at some stage, so we're going to be editing this, but let's just leave that as it is. And down here we're going to create a new function, void shoot. Now did I spell it as shoot, lowercase shoot, hang on, lowercase s. You could always check your capitalization. So now we've got a function called shoot. Now this is where it gets interesting. In the shoot, what we're going to do, this is where we're going to do something called raycasting. So let me go to my screen and show you. If I look at the game here, click game, right, raycasting. But basically what it does is it looks at the screen. Raycasting is through the, it's to do with the main camera basically. Through the main caster we fire out a line, a ray from the somewhere in the screen that we pick, and let's just say it wants to be the center of the middle of the screen, so there, and anything that it touches, it we get an information about whatever it strikes. This line, we don't see it on in game, but it's just basically, it's like it fires a beam of light from where the camera, center of the camera, is forward, and anything that's got a what's known as a collider reports back. So for example, hit the terrain, we'll know that it's a terrain. If it's a zombie, we'll know it's a zombie, etc. So whatever has a collider asset, a rigid body asset, we know what it is. So we've got this shoot function here, so we're going to be using this thing called rays. Let me just show you here. I think it's really useful. If I click that little button, I've shown you this before, we'll go to scripting API and we type in ray. Right, it's an infinite line starting at the origin and going in some direction. That's what it defines a ray, and that's what we are going to do. We are going to be doing using it through the origin. So so we're going to be using it through the camera. So if you look through here, we look at ray casting, ray, there we are, cast, click show. You get basically, this allows you to, we want to do there's a lot, anyway, basically there's a load of, I'm going to be using one of these, I can't remember which one it is now, I'm a bit confused. Let's just go back to my code and just type it in, and we'll figure it out as we go along. So we're going to use this thing, we're going to go ray, as I was saying, array, and we're going to create a temporary variable, and we're going to call it ray origin, origin. So that's a temporary variable called ray origin. local variable it calls it, and we're going to set it equal to. Now this is where we're looking from the camera dot, and it's going to be main because it's on the main game, and it's going to be screen point to array, and it's first thing that comes up. So as I was saying, it's going to be from the array. This infinite line is going to be shot from the, it's going to come from the camera, the main, which is on the main bit, and it's a screen point to array, and we're going to create a new vector free, and we need to, so basically what we're doing now is we're pointing it where we're going from. This is the from, and it's going to be from, we want it from the center of the screen, so it's screen dot width, if I could spell correctly, it does help, divided by 2, in other words in the middle of the screen, and we want it in the middle of the, I've spelled screen wrong, that's why I'm getting all these funny little errors. There we are. And we want it at the height as well. I like copying and pasting. You gotta be careful that you change things. Height, so it's halfway through the width, halfway through the height, and we're not interested about the Z, so we just put Z because it's a 3D location. I think if we put semicolon, that's it. Let me just check. That looks alright to me. So it's going from the center of the screen. We find an array from the center of the screen straight forward. Green, halfway through this width, halfway through the height. So you can actually choose to fire the array from wherever you want, really. But it's not it's harder to play if you do it from different places in the screen. And we need to know basically we're going to create what we hit. So we're going to create another one called array, and it's cast, there we are, hit. This is what we're going to hit. So what did we do? We hit. Let's create another temporary variable. Let's call it hit info. So this hit info will store whatever we hit. Wherever that array hit will get stored in hit info. Really simple. So now we just go if. So we need to get information from it. And physics is what it actually is. It's part of the physics. FY physics. Here we go. Physics dot raycast. We are raycasting after all. Raycast, and it's from the ray origin, which we defined up here as that variable. So copy and paste that. Hang on, put it in the right place, Wayne. The ray origin, and then we're going to output the results to this variable that we just created up there. That's just a local variable which gives us what the information is to hit info. So now hit info stores whatever we touch with this infinite beam that we shot from the center screen forward. So that ray origin stores, sorry, the hit info stores the information about what we hit, which is why it's called hit info. Now we want some way of just outputting it so that we got it, so we're just going to create a simple little debug for now. We'll go into more in the later, so hang on, lowercase, debug log, debug.log. We do this. Debugs are always great. So what we're going to output, the hit info. So we're going to type in, first of all, let's type in hit. What did we hit? Plus, and it's going to be hit info. But you can't just simply type hit info. You have to go hit info dot transform dot name. So what transform did we hit? Semicolon. Let me just check that that's spelt right. Hit info. So basically this here will show us what we hit. Hopefully we're going to see the word terrain and zombie. Let's save it. So we've got a now shoot function. Let's just see what happens, shall we? Let's close that down. Minimize that. Let's press play. You never know until you press play. It's my rule. Right, nothing much is happening now. I'm firing. It says hit terrain. Clear this off. Console, clear, Wayne, hit terrain. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, and I've had this one before, is here your camera. Make sure that that's tagged as main camera and not left untagged. Let me show you what happens when it's untagged. I'm going to press play. You get this null exception, and that's because that's untagged. It's very annoying. I found no documentation on it, but I came across this a few months ago actually. I've just remembered it. Make sure that this is tagged as main camera. Notice it's one of the default tags. It should be tagged by default. Some of you guys have it tagged. If it's not tagged, raycasting will not work. It's very annoying, and it took me a while to figure that one out by myself. So anyway, I'm hitting terrain, and I'm getting nothing from the zombies. I'm touching them, I'm firing them. I'm firing lots and lots and lots of bullets. Nothing. So why they're not being hit? So let's clear that out. Zombies. What we've got a rigid body. I can see what it is. We've got no collider. If there's no collider, there's nothing to hit. They have a rigid body. I would have thought it would have hit the rigid body, but it's not. We have no collider, so let's add a collider. I've written the zombie. I'm going to say this is a prefab. Capsule collider. So just hang on. Type in caps. Make sure it's a capsule collider. Scroll down. Let's click on the zombie. Where's this capsule collider here? Which zombie is it? That one. Why am I not seeing it on the screen? I'm in game, Wayne. I'm doing this out. I'm going to do this in the game. So I'm doing it in scene view. All right, let's get this up here. 1. Let's set the height to 2. So there, I'm going to click. Let's go to the top. Click apply. So it updates all the other prefabs. So all of them got a capsule collider. Let's press play. Right. So just hit the terrain. That works. Hit the zombies. Yes, we're hitting zombies. Hitting terrain. Hitting terrain. Can you see you've got zombie 1 and zombie 2 and the zombie. They've all got different names. So what we really want to do is display the tag, not the actual because what it's doing is picking up this name here, which is the transform name. It's not actually the tag. It's more important we pick up the tag, because if you're firing a bullet and you're saying, oh, if it hits the zombie, you'll only kill one of them. The other 2 zombies will be immune. So anyway, that's a little bit of a bug to fix for later. So anyway, this is my video on the weapon system part 1, and it's a recap, so it might be a little bit of a long one this. I'll see you in a minute. So this is Teacher Wayne signing out, and thank you very much for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.